Thanks for being here and welcome to this is a very long-running panel, and every year I think we're going to change the name of it, but here we go. So you're in the future, by the way, of enhanced advertising, addressing brands, message, technology, media, and entertainment, which means we could talk about anything we want. And so we try to keep things timely. We try to talk about the things that are most front and center in the news as it relates to our industries. My name's Tom. I'm a long-time, which means old, advertising industry executive and consultant. So I work with a lot of brands, a lot of ad agencies. But enough about me. I'm going to have the panel introduce each other, and starting with Jeff. And Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, and more importantly, why you do what you do, or why you like what you do.
Sure, that's a lot. I'm Jeff Herlo. I'm head of brand solutions for Vimeo. I guess what I do, Vimeo is basically a community that's kind of developed over the past 10 years. It's a very creative community, and over the last couple of years we decided we're not an ad platform, but we figured we want to work with brands in a way that's interesting. So my role is really to kind of tap into that mass audience of filmmakers and creatives and develop interesting content that we think works for the web. Since we're not tied to an advertising platform, it allows us to sort of play with it more. So we're very interested in kind of where it's going. So for me personally, the role is really the exploration of where branded content is going.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ari. Sorry.
That's all right. So I'm Ari Avishai. I work at CAA Marketing, and if those that are not familiar with the marketing group within CAA, we're a marketing services group collective of marketing and creative experts that sit within Creative Artists Agency, one of the world's leading entertainment agencies. And what we do sitting within CAA is we have brand clients that we work with, some of them Fortune 500, Fortune 50, and innovative marketers that we help identify, create, build, concept, and help them produce entertainment solutions to real world brand issues. And so sometimes that might take the form of a piece of brand driven video, sometimes it might be an experience, sometimes it might be a partnership between our clients' brands and a filmmaker, a writer, director, an athlete, musician, whatever it may be. But sitting within CAA kind of gives us a number of tools at our disposal that we can bring entertainment-based solutions to our brands. And from specific brands, to just share a little bit, we work with brands like Coca-Cola and General Motors and Chipotle and about 10, 15 other brands, which I can share more about.
Why do you like your job?
I like it because I would say what keeps me coming back there, I've been there for about 6 years, the solutions with which we provide to our clients are very diverse, and so I like being able to not always rely on an individual approach to the solutions. And so whenever we receive a brief or identify a challenge, we never know where that's going to land. And the excitement of having so much at your disposal that you can bring to bear on behalf of your clients is something that keeps a curious person like myself there.
Next up is Otto. He's from West Philadelphia. We have the same accent, as you'll see in a minute here.
Born and raised. My name is Otto Bell. I am the Vice President and Group Creative Director of Courageous, which is Turner's brand studio. Started about 6 months ago. Used to run Ogilvy Entertainment in New York and just moved over to Turner to start CNN's brand studio. We've since grown to help Turner on the non-fiction side and also servicing Great Big Story, which is our new all-video platform, which was announced this morning. We have, since June, we've built a 10-person operation, soon to grow more, of dedicated full-time directors, folks with journalism backgrounds, documentarians, web developers, designers, a team of people who make and do things on behalf of the network's biggest advertisers.
Jay?
Nice. I'll start with why I do what I do.
There we go.
So when I first came out here to Hollywood, I'm from Sweden originally, so this is very exotic to me.
I thought that was Pittsburgh.
Yeah. You're filling up the panel with accents here, so figured I'll give that an explanation. But one of my first mentors out here told me that no one in Hollywood knows anything, and I think that was very comforting. And I figured I could dive in and try to learn something, and content marketing was evolving at the time. I was a journalist, and I saw that this could be a very interesting field of storytelling, and actually reinvent something that everyone hates, which is advertising, more or less, you know. And I worked, so that's a preface to what I do. I work for an advertising agency, so we do things that people necessarily, not necessarily like, right? So is there a better way of doing that? Who knows? But we're trying to figure it out, and our agency is called Eisenberg. We're one of the largest independent ones out here on the West Coast, and I run the A-List, which is our original content studio, as well as our influencer orchestration network. So work with a lot of new media talent.
Josh?
Great. Well, hey everyone, I'm Josh Kruder, and I oversee the digital product portfolio for Clear Channel Outdoor. So ultimately, if you want to think about us in terms of what is our media platform, it is billboards. And a reason I'm excited by what we do and why I'm here is I came from the client side originally, and what I've seen about billboards in the almost 2 years where I've been on the sell side with Clear Channel really is you think about an array of digital screens that reach 100 million people a month in the United States, and thousands more where you can use data sets like mobile. Really what we're talking about is an unskippable above-the-line medium that helps brands tell stories and connect with audiences across screens. And some of those screens happen to be 80 feet off the ground and 50 feet wide, and some of them happen to be 4.8 inches diagonal. But ultimately it's about reaching audience and engaging them in a compelling way.
Jason?
Hello, everybody. I'm Jason Jersinovic. I'm the president of Havas. We're a French multinational agency. I'm based in New York. I work on most of the future innovation clients that we have. I'm trying to, fix the industry, which is a challenge we all suffer, the malaise of. I was struck by the question, why do I do what I do? And I have to say it's because I had a liberal arts education, and that was the only job I could get.
There you go.
Good education, though.
I'm with you on that one. So we're going to go over. I'm going to throw out some territories for you guys to discuss, and let's start off by talking about ad blockers. So marketing in a digital world enables us to control content like never before, and of course that means we can control the ads and in fact block them. I heard a stat recently that already about 10 to 15% of the market is being blocked. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but how will the industry?
That's really bad news.
Yeah, that could be bad news for some of us. So how will the industry and consumers react to this? And is this good news for those of us that spend a lot of time in creating what I call brand content, not branded necessarily, but brand content that really comes from the brand rather than sponsored content? Will this force us to make even better brand content? So what is the impact going to have, do you believe, on the industry and on consumers? Let's just start with Jeff.
Well, I think with ad blockers, I don't think anyone consuming content is going to be too upset about it. But I do see it as a problem for publishers who obviously make a lot of revenue from advertising. But I think for me, something that's been said just in the introduction, the biggest part about what I think we do and the biggest challenge brands have is how do you address storytelling? And leveraging traditional advertising for the web, which is now being blocked, is kind of like the dumb way to do it. Like when success is measured in fractions of a percentage, That's it's not the greatest way to get your message across. So I think what it forces us to do, it forces us to sort of look at the landscape of what does it mean to be digital advertising, and how do you craft a story that is not, it's much more creative. So for me right now, it's an interesting time. We're not an ad platform, as I said before, so we've been thinking about this a lot in terms of what does it mean to be a storyteller right now. And I think we're reaching a tipping point, and I think it's actually exciting for content creators.
Josh, you got to be smiling down there when you hear this one.
No, it's just thinking about it. I mean, a few different things. So I'll put my quick plug in that you can't skip a billboard, but but look, obviously yet. We'll talk afterwards. No, but all kidding aside, I mean, thinking about this, so we certainly also play, as I alluded to in my opening, in mobile, and sometimes that is, retargeting an audience. So I think there's a few different layers of how to look at this, because it really is a nuanced question. I mean, when you look at the amount of traffic going to mobile, and you look at the fact that on mobile, 85% plus of the usage is apps which can't be ad blocked. We look at data coming across the exchanges as we look at location data too, and there really has not been that big a statistically significant change as Apple and Google kind of slug it out in usage patterns. But I think, to the point that was just made, the other thing that comes up that this seems to really be opening the conversation about is what's a good ad? Is an ad this content delivery mechanism that captivates me, entertains me, delivers content of use to me? Then that's something that's less likely to be blocked as any kind of ad blocking technology gets more refined, as opposed to this broad brush, nothing to do with me and my life. I'm probably ignoring that whether I have an ad blocker or not.
Jason, as an agency who has made advertising that people actually want to watch, Most Interesting Man Alive, for example.
What?
I know, it's crazy. That's true. People make their own versions. It's funny. Well, I think the nuanced question is a good insight. There's a classic quote that the future is not evenly distributed, and for many clients, it's a wake-up call to realize they need to reinvent how they think about the way they engage with their customers and the way they engage with the medium. For other clients that are more mature, they've been developing digital engagement platforms for years, and they're like, okay, so what? So it's probably in general, to put the soundbite out there, I think it's the death nail that could save our industry, because it's forcing us to reinvent ourselves. It's an urgent thing because there's a lot of revenue at play, and so you have to immediately think about how do you change your response and how do you think about things in a different way.
Otto, what kind of conversations are you guys having at Turner about this?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we do it, Courageous, is sort of in a realm beyond your typical banners and buttons. I mean, we are focused heavily on creating interesting, dimensionalized experiences that people actually want to engage with, that have relevancy, that are delivered at the right time, and are really immersive and relevant to their lives. So we're sort of playing in a world which is beyond this ad blocking technology.
Mm-hmm. And Ari, are clients asking you about this, or are you guys taking a more kind of aggressive role?
Well, the clients that we have are those that the reason they come to us are because they want to create brand-funded content that on its own stands as entertainment and is not for the purpose of interrupting viewing or tricking consumers into viewing it. So for us, the clients that we work with are already sort of doing things that will avoid ad blocking. So on one hand, it's great because this will elevate the creative delivery of what all brands do. Selfishly, I think it's, we were one of the few, I agree with some of the folks here too, that we're doing this already. So I think it's just going to require all of the other maybe legacy agencies to up their game, which ultimately will be better for consumers. And the publishers, while it's unfortunate right now, they'll figure it out. They'll figure out how to overcome it.
Well, there's a lot of apps being purchased, ironically, in the Apple Store right now that block ads. So it's ironic that there's money to be made in blocking ads, not just creating them. So let's talk a little bit about live streaming. So live streaming is, I'm curious. I mean, when Twitter paid, I think it was $100 million for Periscope, when we look at events like that, that's usually what happened. That's usually what spurs consumer adoption, right? So, but when it comes to live streaming, are any brands doing this well? I mean, what kind of conversations? I mean, Jeff, you're at a company obviously known for video, but when it comes to actually live streaming and live events, what are we seeing out there that matters or that's perhaps even exciting?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess when I think about it, I sort of think about it from my own personal perspective, like how many things do I need to see live? There's just not a lot. They tend to be sporting events or they're concert events, but even concert stuff is less so. We certainly get asked quite a bit about this particular subject. To me, unless there's some specific event that requires that level of live, it's not something that's heavily weighing on us right now.
Are any of you guys working on anything, Jason?
I can talk about something
great.
here.
Yeah, here too.
Me too.
Go, awesome.
Me three.
So there's been I think you touched on it with sporting events. So one of our clients is doing the sponsorship of the live streaming technology at sporting events, and it's a slightly different take because say I'm at a game and I want to see something that's happening on the other side. There's a million people that would probably be interested in seeing that view from that corner of the end zone from that person that had that right shot. And so that's a valuable experience. So if a brand can enable that to come to my experience, that's something that's interesting, and that's something if that aligns with the brand value, then that's good. So you're seeing like San Francisco Stadium is a good example, the Atlanta Stadium and Notre Dame Stadium. There's a peer-to-peer technology that's being put in the stadiums that allows for people on the stadium to share amongst themselves, ironically using the same technology as BitTorrent, to experience the streaming value or the stream itself without having to download it from the cell towers, which is a big issue when you're at these games because you can't even get a text out, right? Everyone's on it. So that's, I think, an evolution of a platform that enables consumer value to come into play, and the brand can play in that space in a positive light. It's different than I'm like streaming the show at the Hollywood Bowl, and there's a lot of issues regarding the rights at these events that is problematic. So it's a watch the space thing, but it's definitely interesting from a technology standpoint.
I understand, to that point real quick, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the NFL, of course, hates live streaming. Mm-hmm. However, the Jacksonville Jaguars have a team of employees that go around the stadium and live stream, but it's blocked, so the streams don't go outside of the stadium.
Yeah.
So,
and there will be enlightenment at some point when perhaps television revenue is no longer what it is. I don't know what that breaking point is, but if I'm a Jacksonville fan, I want to see that. Am I gonna find a way to see that? Maybe I'll join their club or join something or pay a premium, and it could be another revenue stream if I'm really into watching them lose.
And this weekend, they're actually, Yahoo's live streaming the first ever game, NFL game.
That's right, in London,
and it's
right?
actually Jacksonville versus Buffalo. You would think they would have chosen two better teams if they wanted that to take off. But it'll be interesting to see if that's a platform where football fans want to consume. I think, like sporting, when you talk about live streaming, sports makes a lot of sense. So there's a lot of, whether it's playing with the angles and a lot of fun there. When it comes to like music, they talk about ability to recreate the music atmosphere that you have, and one of the major reasons that the music industry has pivoted so much in the last 10 years is the festivals and the festival business that I know for my colleagues in music and other folks, it's changed the industry in a fantastic way. No one's yet been able to crack the streaming music, at least in my opinion, the streaming music experience the same way that people are now opting not to go to games live because the viewing experience at home or on your phone or whatever is adequate or maybe even better. I think that whoever cracks that for music will be ahead of the game, and then if a brand is involved in it, it'll be incredibly beneficial for them, but it's not going to be an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
There's something there that's not
And
working.
I think I can add to that too, because you mentioned sports and you mentioned music, right? And half of what our agency does is gaming related, right? So, you can say esports, right? Or competitive gaming is huge. And we were actually at the first annual TwitchCon a few weeks ago in San Francisco, and they had almost 20,000 live streamers show up for that event at the Moscone, and it took 5 years for VidCon, which is the equivalent for YouTubers, to get to that size. So the realization I had, and we were also live streaming for that event in partnership with a bunch of the brands that we work with that were also there and exhibiting and also investing a lot in live streaming sponsorship, is that this is a whole new category. There's influencers with followers. They're doing different things that are reinventing storytelling live to an audience with chat, for example, as it works on Twitch. And this is happening now across platform, across mediums, and it's a really interesting space for brands who want to innovate and stay on top of things and potentially reach huge audiences.
Well, and to your point, I mean, so we on our big screens, we've streamed live moments from the Rugby World Cup for Ralph Lauren, and we've done fashion shows. And in each of those, to your point, it's about sports. What's the compelling reason inside that story that something should be live? And in that case, we used Periscope, but it was a case of Periscope being the creative tool. And, or another example, we have a mountain resort who's a client that's an hour and a half outside of Zurich. And they couldn't convince people in Zurich just how close they were. And the easiest way to get people to have an experience on the mountain was to be interacting with someone live who was Skyped in, who was sitting on the mountain talking to them, issuing them tickets in the morning, and then the live conversation happened later in the day where you saw the people from the morning actually hanging out on the mountain, broadcast back into the train station. But it was all about that worked because it made sense to have this live video hookup. It wasn't about forcing video into some other kind of story construct and hoping it worked.
So we talked politics, sports,
Fashion.
gaming, fashion,
Tourism.
music, a lot of
Yeah.
Politics. I'm happy to say we just did this Democratic debate the other week. We did 10:20 p.m. I think we topped out at 980,000 concurrent streams of the Democratic debate. That's up from 921,000 concurrent streams that we did for the Republican debate. Just by way of context, I think that was an all-time record for streaming of a live news event. Context there, NBC I think pulled in 1.3 million concurrent streams for the Super Bowl. So to be in that ballpark, so to speak, is a very exciting step for us. And even better, we monetized it. We had digital specific, streaming specific advertisers who got great visibility. Thanks to that solution, which ran across Apple TV, CNN.com, and CNN Go, all our mobile apps.
I mean, there's a sort of meta-level insight that all of us have touched on, and that's that consumers want to watch what they want to watch, wherever they are, whenever they want to watch
TV
it.
everywhere.
Right? So it's, we talk about, many of these other panels are talking about on-demand or over-the-top or whatever you want to call it. That's a big part of what's changing the industry we're all in, and the empowerment of the consumer is not going to go away. You can't put that back in. So that's where the platform discussion comes in, and how do you make that relevant, regardless of what content it is. Whether that's going to be a good buy for Yahoo on Sunday or not, I'm not sure, but I do think it's an interesting moment in time where they're prioritizing that experience.
Right, and I mean, for live event too, there's no way of, basically ad skipping through a live event, right? And these kind of opportunities are also really important because they create new revenue streams that can fund live events. So all of a sudden, if you have a little intimate gig with someone, playing a KCRW show at the little club, you can get 30, 40 people there, but all of a sudden you can get thousands or like unlimited amount of audience for something like that. And that can really be a game changer for that producer and that brand who is, all of a sudden now not sponsoring a little intimate get-together, but, potentially a big broadcast.
Especially if you're capturing that and you actually have a strategy in place for how you can take something that started as a moment and make sure that moment lives on and gets you those extra exposures.
So, what I like about, what all you guys do is if it's important to people's lifestyles, you're going to find a way to innovate around that and to bring it to the forefront. Much like social media. Okay, social media obviously fits in perfectly as people began living more mobile lifestyles and short attention span theater content is what they required. But if social all went away tomorrow, would it have really mattered?
Isn't this live stream, by the way? I see a camera back there.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know.
You're right.
But seriously,
Wasn't high school the original social network?
But really, what role does social as it evolves, if it's evolved, how you've seen it evolve? What role is it playing now that may have been different even a couple of years ago? And again, both from a technology standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, and from a content standpoint. I think we talk about content so much, we forget about how important increasingly it is to be able to create compelling social content, not just video content. And we'll start with the video guy and ask you about social and how that works with your business.
Well, I mean, if social went away, I think my daughter would be really pissed off. But I think it's kind of something Josh had kind of touched upon was social. When I think about social, like we're creating content for social as well outside of our platform. So when I look at social, it's just a method of delivery. So I think what it is kind of what I was saying earlier, is it's like, how do we have these conversations? How do we create storytelling in a way that taps into how people receive information? And that can be a billboard, that can be broadcast, that can be digital, that can be social. So, I think it does matter. I think it is important. I think we've reached a point with social that it's become a very normal way to receive a lot of the information that we're getting. So it becomes an important element in the storytelling capability. So I think it's still fundamental. I think it's absolutely growing as the social platforms themselves develop their own sort of methods of this. That's also an evolving process, but it's certainly something we think about quite a bit.
I think of as it relates to brands, I feel like it's sort of had two stages that are happening concurrently and affecting each other. So the one side of it is it allowed brands to be humanized to their audience and to build a relationship with them and communicate with them, which was great. And some brands do it better than others, and some rely on the data to realize, do our brands like when we talk about this and that, and they're getting better at it. Great. The other thing, which is from a consumer standpoint, I think is good, but it's brought a level of forced transparency into the world of corporations, because everyone has this voice. And if your brand does something that is inappropriate or is wrong or is inhumane, whatever it is, you're going to be called out for it pretty quickly. So brands were really excited. They opened themselves up for these conversations, but now it's brought a situation where they need to be more transparent with their businesses. And you see things like I think of what McDonald's did last year around South by Southwest, where thanks to social media, it was able to be communicated that they were underpaying these like up and coming emerging bands who deserve to get more money, and McDonald's was leveraging what they were doing. And so, nothing against McDonald's, if anyone works for them in the room, but it's required all of these corporations to be more honest and forthcoming, which from a consumer standpoint and for brands that already act ethically, like Chipotle and many others, I think it's a leg up, but it'll require the others to kind of follow in suit.
And Otto, at Contagious, tell us about like your staff and the responsibilities. Like, where are the lines with social? Do you actually have like social experts, or is it everybody's responsibility now to think social?
Yeah, I mean, what you don't want to do is fall in that trap where there's a digital person and a TV person. No, everybody thinks about social. We're lucky enough to be one of the last true destination websites left. So we got a really good, sort of audience inside of our own ecosystem. But we have set up a lot of tools to get out there. So we have the sociology tool, which basically uses a Turner Data Cloud to hit all of the people wherever they might be receiving their video. But this morning we launched Great Big Story, which is it's not a website, it's not an app, it's a new type of network entirely predicated on feeding people's feed with video. So we do have expertise in-house to understand and to decode where people's passion points lie and who we should be pushing our video to on the social seeding side. But yeah, it runs through everything we do like a Roman road.
And if you haven't yet heard the announcement or seen Great Big Story, check it out. It's a brilliant approach. If I could plug it on your behalf,
you did help.
I'm excited for it. So.
Well, to us, I think everything starts with social. Social now, as you know, everyone here has mentioned, is now spread through everything, right? Everything has a social angle. We still call it a social team. They're the biggest team at our agency right now, which should say something. And we're kind of rebranding them now as a real-time content studio, because that's really what they do. And we've seen a lot of success. We manage a lot of social channels for different brands, and it's a 24/7 job of just being out there and listening, and then having a whole creative team with copywriters and videographers and editors and stuff like that can create really funny, quirky, interesting, informative social posts that are created to basically be spread across the web. So I mean, listening and finding phenomenon, like you guys remember, like the white and gold dress, or things like that, where these things, hashtags or whatever, certainly take off, and then now these days brands are almost expected to have a response and top each other.
I think it's permission based. I mean, I think that there's a certain to have a real-time 24/7 newsroom. I agree, you should be listening all the time and finding an appropriate moment in which to enter a conversation. But that idea of a brand newsroom that publishes 10 to 12 pieces of clip art a day, I'm just talking about blocking. I'm gonna rid myself of that quicker than
Well, I don't think
that's
you
the
need
relevancy
to.
factor, right?
I don't think
that's exactly it.
Yes. I don't think you need to publish. It's quality over quantity, right?
Yes.
Because if you're not relevant, and if you're you have someone create something 2 weeks ago and then it go up and then it's scheduled and automatic, then you're not part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Like people need to
But
react to
you gotta pick
these
your
things.
conversations, I think is my point. You gotta find that moment where you do have permission, and you are additive to that conversation, as opposed to, look, we have sort of a point of view with a coupon attached to it.
Right. And I think that's where agencies are still relevant, because they can determine, they have a larger brand insights and understand where the brands want to go, and then decide when to engage and when not to engage, and what kind of content to do. I mean, we've all seen horror stories too, to the opposite, of brands doing something that was totally inappropriate with the intention of just creating something viral, so.
And it's about thinking through those rules and having sort of the very clean brief of what's the story I'm looking to tell and how social going to advance that. I mean, I know a number of us have as a client up here Coca-Cola, and to give you an example, this summer, as part of extending Share Coke, we worked with Coke and Google to create this personalized experience in Times Square where you could literally tweet in your name with a custom hashtag, and it would check and go, is this name on the 160,000 name Coke database? Yes. If so, pull fact about name from Google database, render on the fly on an out-of-home screen in under a minute. But the real hook that tied it all together was because Twitter was the entry mechanic, that immediately fed to Coke's social team, acknowledging you in real time that you messaged in, following back up to you afterwards with that shot of you there. And because we use social, I mean, that started in Times Square. It was a 3-week campaign, so you reached about 5 million people in the square, but suddenly it was trending in 12 cities in the United States and 110 countries. And Coke was thrilled because they saw that then, to everyone's point here, it became organic because people suddenly went, oh my God, this is about me. It was the heart of what social was. So we actually were going, why is it trending in London? And we saw there were One Direction fans who in One Direction fan fiction have a character named Larry, who's the amalgamation of Lewis and Harry. And they were going nuts and retweeting to all their friends every time a fact about Larry showed up on a billboard in Times Square, and Coke was contacting them with the image.
All right, we're going to skip Jason.
Drop the mic, drop the mic. So in summary, the way we think about it now is not to have a digital strategy or a social strategy or a mobile strategy, but to have a strategy that comes to life through those media effectively. And I think that's what we're all kind of saying, that it's not about channel-specific engagement techniques or what's, you may change it for Snapchat versus, Twitter or et cetera, but it's about having a point of view that's relevant to who your audience is so that they want the utility you're providing them. And if you do that well, then it's not an ad, then it's something of value that I look forward to. Otherwise, I'm going to hide them and drop them from my feed, and they're dead to me.
And as soon as you violate that trust, you're gone. It's that simple.
There's no second chance there.
Let's talk a little bit about how great content gets produced now. I mean, it used to drive me nuts in the agency world. I'd have a brilliant creative team. They'd come to me with this brilliant idea. I'd say, I love it. Let's do it. What do we need to do it? Oh, we need to hire this big, huge production company, and we have to have this one director, and he's going to cost $1 million to product, and he wants a helicopter, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, I like the first idea better than the second idea. So it used to drive me crazy that that's the only way to make this happen, right? Nowadays, we know that's not true. With all the GoPros in people's hands, and with all the partnerships that are happening nowadays, both between brands and agencies, et cetera, there's many, many ways to create great content. There's also many, many ways to create crappy content. So why don't you talk a little bit about your particular companies, some examples, and where you see where you've seen the kind of flexibility that I now fully welcome to create great content.
Could I start this one?
Sure.
So we saw an opportunity to internalize production facilities in-house in direct response to this conundrum. So in the past, we'd had investments or partnerships with external production companies, and we still do, but we consolidated a few of them in-house and have our own digital production facility in-house, which is not unheard of here in California, but in the agency world, to be able to do that quickly and efficiently and turn around ideas in a couple hours was pretty interesting. But it led to this notion of our clients asking us, well, can you do that for us? Well, then we became a disintermediary function of our own business model, where we then were like, yeah, I guess we can do that, and then we don't have a job anymore, right? So we did that, and we helped many of our clients develop their own internal content production facilities with our assistance and with our leadership and our guidance. And interesting enough, it becomes enablement for the future of what we're doing, because you no longer are having to go chase that spot or do that commercial or do that thing to hit your numbers, but in discussing, like, what is it that you're saying, how are you doing it, and then how does that enable them to spend their dollars more effectively, hopefully with you. So that's been a serious pivot for us in taking the core nature of what we have used to charge $20 million for and then giving it away, or helping them build their own infrastructure to be able to do that. They come back to you if you're smart about that and you manage the thinking of how you create that great content.
And that's how you disrupt yourself too, right?
That's the point I was trying to make, yeah. And that's hard. I mean, my CFO still brings that up. He's like, what are you doing? You're killing us. And I'm like, well, that's what it costs to be relevant in the future is to reinvent yourself.
And
right?
the key phrase you just used there was the thinking about how that happens. I mean, someone could go, I want this on the cheap, and we'll do it on a GoPro and whatever it is, but you know what, if that doesn't fit the vibe of the creative vision, it's still a crappy output that's not relevant to the audience or the display. Or you could hire a multi-million-dollar film crew, and they actually wanted something really sort of organic feeling, and it, you know, so it has to start with that through line, and that's still an essential element of the process.
I think that's the core of what we provide as you know, creatives. I don't want to even use the term agencies, but understanding that dialogue and understanding the way to think through that, albeit in new models and new methods, new innovation processes that hopefully can enable us to exist.
Yep. You know, and same, look, as an ad platform, I mean, we have a creative director to guide a process that could be as simple as mood boards, or it could be full through if someone asks us to do it, knowing our place in the chain and knowing the conversation. We have coders, but they're not doing digital rendering and layout without guidance from a creative director and without the client and their agency commissioning us to do that. It's about being flexible and adaptive, because there are going to be a million different ways a need manifests itself.
One of the areas that I feel is really exciting too is how you can use technology to create a new form of storytelling, to use it as a new canvas. And a lot of the times, traditional studios, you know, might be too risk averse to take those risks, and the brands will go out there and fund some of it. And I think for, you know, we're seeing here at Digital Hollywood a lot of talk about AR and VR and 360, video 360, right? So I think that's a totally new area for brands to really go in. And you know, one example that I was thinking about is, you know, you got the Summer Olympics coming up in Rio, right? And it's 290 days or whatever. And I think that could really be a game changer for brands that want to do these kind of activations and really enhance people's experience of what they could be watching on TV. Well, tune into our channel and, you know, see a virtual reality or a 360 immersive video from here and here with so and so. And
I'm not sure I want to be the brand sponsor for the 360 video for the guy who falls off the boat.
I mean, gotta manage the risks.
The 360 experience of
the submerged cam.
botulism. Sorry, too soon.
For our part, we've made a really big investment and drastically changed our production model on the branded content side. When I arrived, we did an audit, and we looked at how much money was being outsourced to third-party vendors, and very quickly changed the model to one of self-sufficiency, which has now been realized and is paying dividends. So we've opened edit rooms, we have a full 4K camera operation, and we have full-time craft editors. Because I disagree, you know, I think there is a craft to a lot of the production work that we all are involved with. Whether you want that to feel one way or you want that to feel very polished, it involves craft. So we've invested in award-winning documentarians, Emmy-winning journalists, web developers. A lot of these brand studios that you see popping up are often rebadging of creative services departments. This is a fully stocked, full-time team that has been built from the ground up to have talent in-house so that we can be self-sufficient. You look at that, we all know the old production conundrum, right? You can have it good, fast, affordable, pick two. When you've got an award-winning full-time staff and all the equipment you need, we're getting very close to cracking that conundrum, which is good because, you know, we're trying to generate newsworthy content. So yeah, we're getting close to that promised land of high quality, affordable, and turned around at a good speed.
And I, from an agency that aims to provide a variety of solutions for clients, I think there's a different role that these various levels of content can play. And so if you, and it often will depend on the medium that you're within, but if you want a beautiful piece of banner content that's going to live within a Super Bowl or something of that, you know, of extreme, then you might have to work with one of those multi-million-dollar budgets that the creatives used to bring in. If you want an always-on solution to be topical when appropriate, and you need to turn it around quick and cheap,
Yeah.
then there's a role for that too. I don't think there's a right or wrong solution there. It all depends on the larger message you're trying to communicate, how deep of it you want to go, and really what role that plays in the larger strategy. Because there is still a role for beautiful, well-produced content, and there's a role for quick GoPro style shot on your iPhone and turned around tomorrow.
Well, and I think, Otto, I think you're right. At the end of the day, talent is going to win no matter where it comes from, right? But also, there's a very real fear within the big ad agencies of, when that phone rings from Radical Media saying, what the hell are you guys doing? You're taking the bread off the table here now, and, look at all we've done for you. So Jason, it depends on how big we see those internal, where we start crossing those lines
it's a
of the kind
challenge.
of content we create.
I could also call Radical Media up and say the same thing.
Yes, that's
right?
a good point.
So we've become frenemies. That's the term I hear a lot. Another interesting trend I've seen a lot is clients internalizing a lot of these functions and hiring creatives out of our agencies and out of our ranks into their own function, and then realizing how hard it is to manage a creative business. It's not as simple as, we'll just save us all this money. We don't have to deal with those agency people. But the culture of creativity is very different, and managing a successful long-term creative company requires a different point of view. So that's another value that we have, and our ability to come back to new technology solutions with that creativity is the thing that's going to diffuse the Radical Media call.
It's interesting hearing at what everyone's saying. I mean, and maybe this is such an exception it can't be the rule, but I certainly look at how Apple and its agencies have managed this continuum is fascinating. I mean, the iPhone 6 campaign was beautifully rendered, beautifully laid out, beautifully mounted and designed, whatever medium it was in, but it was ultimately inviting owners of the phones to send in their best shots to a website. So it was sourced from camera phones, and yet processed and rendered in a way that it fit into something that is very clearly a smart agency and brand designed ad that fits with the rest of a campaign arc that's been going on for a while.
I think the Apple campaign was a good one. That Apple campaign was good, but I would say that there, in general, and apologies if Apple's in the room, but talk to us afterwards. There's a lot of inconsistency regarding those campaign messages, and there's some recently that have been cringeworthy that aren't as good as that one. So it's difficult to maintain a high level of exceptional quality when you internalize that function, and perhaps that's their intent, to experiment and see what works and fail fast.
So we're certainly seeing, as we just talked about, some of those lines blurring between where creative and strategy and production begin and end. I think the same thing could be said. I want to hear your opinions on media agencies versus creative agencies. Media agencies, in somewhat of a panic, seem to me to be chasing a lot of different business models these days, making a lot of acquisitions. And for now, they have the money to do it. So let's start with Jason on what
Sorry,
you.
I feel like I'm hogging the panel here a little. Apologies, it's not my intent. It's funny because I'm visiting our media agency tomorrow, and this is the discussion that we're talking about. There's been a desire to explore ad tech on the media side to help save the business. But as advertisers, we're not technologists, or at least typically media companies are not understanding how to build and maintain ad platforms. So there's a tendency and a struggle to, well, we're going to own that and we're going to build our thing. But if you're building a platform, you look at the world a different way than if you're a media agency. So there's a tension between your need to invest in platforms that take away what you do and the need to use technology to improve your customer experience. We've found success by aligning the creative thinking with the data that comes from the media side, and have the insights that come from social listening, that come from Nielsen ratings, that come from whatever inputs you have, feedback to the creative process. So it's the pendulum shifting back to consolidated creative and media agencies, as it was many, many years ago, although I don't think we'll have the commissions for Mad Men days. But some clients really are saying yes to that. Other clients are like, nope, we want a specialist shop that does this, we want a specialist shop that does that. So there's not, in my view, a single answer. It depends on the maturity of your client, what they're seeking, where they are in their reinvention, their own platforms and services that they have, and they might not want ours. So it's a representation of the complicated world we live in, and it's a very expensive game. Like companies are going to win and lose in the next couple of years on this. It's a high stakes table.
And Ari, you know I'm not going to let you off the hook here. I had many, many closed-door conversations when CAA decided to come out with CAA marketing. After all the money we've paid their talent, that's how it would always start, right? They'll never be able to compete against us, but you're doing a hell of a job. So you lived through that. You've seen this, and now fingers are pointing on all over the place. There's the talent agency, there's the media agency, there's the creative agency. There's the social agencies also who are starting to create their own internal creative divisions. They've been doing a lot of creative work for free, quite frankly, that goes along with their technology. So how does it work at CAA? What are you seeing in your unique position as starting out as a talent agency that started a creative agency?
Well, I can tell you from the talent point of view, specific to our group within, we're actually agency agnostic when it comes to the partners that we work with. I've worked on just as many initiatives with people that are represented at other agencies than are represented at CAA. We happen to represent a lot of the talent, but we also, there's a lot of great talent that CAA might not represent. And also, from a client standpoint, it gives them a view into that world, a client of ours, a view into that world that others might not have, which is of value. And I think we've been able to help make our clients more strategic and basically more innovative marketers in doing so. There are certain times, I think, when you think about all the different agencies at play that surround a big client, because they'll have probably one media agency, but multiple creative agencies, and maybe, especially for a portfolio company, multiple social agencies, and on and on and on. I've seen in Best in Success where there's a level of collaboration between agencies, and hopefully whether it's the frenemy position or others, where there's certain times when an initiative will be led by one agency and supported by others. And hopefully a client can create that type of unity between agencies. Seen it work, seen it not. But each of those different agencies there kind of have a different, someone said, outlook on the world, a different supposition that they're approaching. Media agencies often approach from the leverage of having the money and being efficiency experts, and sometimes from there you can get a great creative idea. I think that there's a little bit of a ways to go before the media agencies are seen as true creative solutions, but a lot of them have done some good stuff, and I think that they're not that far away, maybe a couple of good hires away from really being able to deliver the same creative solutions that a creative agency does. Now, the creative agencies have this kind of legacy feel now that their models haven't changed since the Mad Men days, and some of them are evolving. Havas, I think, is one that is doing a good job of reinventing when they need to reinvent and staying true to now. That's true. We do share some clients.
Pay you later.
There you go. But and oftentimes there's social agencies, or even I'll tip my hat to some PR agencies that often had been the afterthought. Don't worry, let us crack the idea, and then we'll call you when we need you to reach out to all of the, reach out to the media to get some earned media. But there's some great things that have come out of there as well, and so it really is a case-by-case scenario of what exactly the brief is, but also what a brand's appetite is and the type of culture that a brand can create, knowing that you're going to need all 5 of those agencies, and yes, they overlap at times, but finding the right mix and the right way to kind of leverage it, as long as the client's best interests are really at the forefront.
And that sort of Zaibatsu approach, if you will, of how you as a brand manage that interplay, I mean, to me that's only going to get more complex, is to go all the way back to the beginning in the ad blocker conversation, when an ad might not be an ad, but it's an experience or a service. I mean, if a car company decides that they're going to offer consumers $70 a month off their lease for the addressable data that set of consumers can give you, is that an ad message? Is it a service? What does the experience look like? How do you concept it? How do you message it? You're going to need to pull from all those different sets of disciplines and balance those out to really create something that's an experience as much as it is a specific message.
Jeff, talk a little bit about your model at Vimeo and who you interact with the most in the agency world.
We kind of talk to a lot of different people. So as I already just mentioned, like interesting work comes out of even, like later on, like PR type agencies. We did a series with Samsung through their agency Edelman, and that to me has actually been one of the most interesting projects we've done. It kind of goes back to a little bit to the question right before this. For me, like this idea that there's all this technology that's coming out that makes things easier to do, so a lot more people are doing it. I spent a lot of my career as a designer, and as technology kind of grew, more and more people could do design. It didn't mean that there was better design, it just meant that there were a lot more designers out there. And I think that that's also true in the content making space. For how we're structured, we actually kind of went the opposite model of what Otto was talking about. We don't have a studio, we have basically a virtual studio. And part of it is because we're not making one type of thing. We're trying to make a lot of different things. So if we were to create an in-house studio, I would kind of describe it, it would feel more like a Swiss Army knife. Like it could do pretty decent at most things. But what we were very interested we were interested in a broad spectrum of ideas. So sometimes when we're talking to a media agency, they're looking for one particular thing. If you're talking to a creative agency, they're looking for a different thing. That's where I still see there's being a difference, because the metrics for success don't necessarily match up between the various groups. So with this virtual studio for us, it allows us to approach the content that needs to be made with the right people. One of the things I think that's also kind of nice from where we're at is that we're interested in multiple perspectives, or POVs. And I see that one of the big initiatives that we've had in terms of working with brands and creating content is how do we get more female filmmakers involved. Right now, when we come up with a brief and we're looking at our roster of people who we want to talk to, it is a majority of men, and that's troubling for me because I think that we're missing a lot of perspective. So that's been, having this sort of virtual studio gives us this rather vast group of people. Our directory is now at about 4,000 people that have been vetted for these types of projects. So we have quite a large landscape to tell stories that aren't being told.
And no offense, guys, we could use a female perspective on this panel as well.
Agreed.
Great.
Please.
We can get an extra chair up. There's still time.
Our goal is 50%, so
Great.
that's what we're shooting for.
That's awesome. We're running out of time, so I want to touch on virtual reality. We're seeing a lot of that. Last year started seeing a little bit at this conference, and now we're seeing more. And of course, I do this panel at CES, and I expect to see a lot of advances from last year in virtual reality. We need to get beyond gaming, as they say, with virtual reality, but I believe that's where a lot of the innovation is going to occur. I personally have no experience yet with virtual reality, so I'd love to hear from anybody on the panel that has some experience or has some insight on virtual reality. Anybody?
I'll go first. I think the funniest experience I had was my daughter put on the VR goggles. We just went to go see a movie, and she was like, mind explosion, like it was so exciting for her, And I think in a lot of ways, especially for a younger generation, like technology, they're first language learners to it. So there's no division. For us who were older, I remember when there wasn't email, like we would actually do stuff like that. So I think the thing is technology and lifestyle and experiences are completely blurred at this point. And when I think about virtual reality and what I've seen, what I'd like to just figure out is like, how does it get past the gimmick phase? I think journalism is a really interesting place right now for virtual reality. In terms of storytelling, like it's the early days of it. Like I just went to a VR festival. It was really nerdy. Like a lot of people sitting around with goggles on. It was kind of weird. But it feels like, okay, this feels like early days of film. So like I think about it as, okay, now this is just another tool for storytellers to create with. Right now, to me, is like, well, okay, so what's interesting? Like, yes, it's a tool for empathy. You certainly get that perspective. But as being someone who's interested in cinema, I'm very interested in how that affects storytelling. And when the director is no longer in full control of what you see, then that opens up new roads for filmmakers.
Yeah, I want to chime into this because this is something I'm really passionate about. So our agency has been working a lot with Microsoft on HoloLens, right? So we've worked with Academy Award-winning filmmakers and other people to create a series of web documentaries about holographic computing, AR, how the interface is going to change. And a lot of this is simulation, and a lot of this is talking to scientists and talking to creatives, basically. And I think this is a game changer. I heard someone say on a panel earlier today that that virtual reality is going to take off and is going to happen is unquestionable. And we've seen that so far. It's kind of been an experience that has made people sick, and it's had all these other drawbacks, right? But we're going to figure it out eventually, and this is where it's going to go, and like the sky is the limit. And I encourage you guys to go to YouTube and check out those HoloLens documentaries if you're interested in this, because it's really interesting stuff. And you have people like Bill Gates talking about why they're so excited about this. And I think the big change now here in Hollywood too has been, just look at where the VC money is going, right? So you have 3 of the biggest companies in the world, Facebook buying Oculus, and you have Microsoft with their HoloLens product, and Google with their Glass or whatever that's going to develop into, as well as a number of other well-funded players. So when there's so much money and so many good minds and creatives involved, that this is going to fizzle this time, I think is unlikely. There will certainly be players that will come and go, and there will certainly be certain technologies, and we've already seen the devices come and go, but eventually we'll figure it out. So I think it's I think this is super exciting. And by the way, I live in Pasadena next to JPL, and did you guys hear about the scientist out there? It was all over the news the other week, speaking about virtual reality, who basically has a new theory of the universe, right? So it's all virtual reality. Big Bang is a computer program that some alien ran. And
wasn't this in the Matrix?
Yeah. So it's like a whole twist on the brain in the VAT scenario, and like virtual reality, and how, and like how the universe is all made up out of mathematics, and if you run enough algorithms, you will eventually come up with the algorithm that creates the Big Bang.
So I'm a simulation, is what you're saying?
Yes. But is it a shared
simulation
simulation, or is it mine?
So I have a couple points. One is that I don't think any of us know. We're all experimenting. We're in the early stages of trying to figure this out. It feels a little bit like, it's the year of mobile again. Now it's the year of VR. So I'm experiencing a bit of deja vu with that. And remember 3D printers? They were going to change everything too. But we're going to continue to experiment, and we'll probably figure it out. And we've done a few brand experiments with it that are interesting. And I could talk about the Masquerade Dos Equis campaign, which was recognized as a creative innovation. Sort of Eyes Wide Shut meets Choose Your Own Adventure experience, celebrating one of their events. Cool stuff, right? Neat. It's interesting. What for me is concerning is, do we need, as a society, another thing to prevent us from talking to each other? like already it's a challenge, and yet there's seemingly a drive towards isolation and jacking in.
But with augmented reality, that's not necessarily the case, though.
But
Although I
my
do
point is it's a
think that
personal
that's-
experience.
yeah, right.
Typically, I engage in the technology
And-
one-on.
I'm
And it's a
immersed and
challenge,
it's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. As opposed to, I mean, maybe we'll all jack in together and it'll be really great. But like, I don't know.
Maybe we all are already.
But then it might be like the silent disco, which I also don't understand.
Yeah,
Because you're still in your own little space.
So,
right?
so it's a, watch this space, right?
Yeah.
Right?
All right, so we're going to open up questions while we have a few minutes left. In the back, in the blue jack?
All the stories are fantastic, but for me, that I'm trying to get into the $1 trillion Hispanic market, my question will be, and I'm quoting.
Plastics.
I'm quoting Advertising Age, which in the September issue, they call it War on Advertising. And I'm quoting, says, ads are being cast as the enemy as consumers find more and more ways to block them. So that's my point, blocking. Will the internet run out of ads? Number 2 question, how advertising agency will attract marketers, consumers? And number 3, will some companies, class action suit, will sue the ad block? That's for the future. Please answer that.
Tom, you want to take that one, Tom?
Where do you want to
Well,
start?
you're citing a magazine that's even had me in it, so it's very questionable periodical. Yeah, Jason, if you'd like to take a shot.
I was trying to pass it back to you. I guess it's game over. We got to just go home.
Go ahead.
So Jason and Josh had a point earlier with VR still being a very personal, singular experience. You're in your own world and you're experiencing it all yourself. I do branded entertainment for hologram productions and entertainment. That's something that people can all experience together. I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions on it.
Bring it. I mean, that sounds like part of the potential solution, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
glasses-free Obi-Wan Kenobi is what I've wanted since I was a child. So
You got a customer
you know,
right
there
here.
you go. But no, look, and all kidding, and hey, to your point about how things are shared, I mean, my God, maybe there's a VR Twitch product where you're actually all immersed and one person's leading the story. I mean, so who knows where
Yeah, I
it
mean,
goes.
we've seen bits of this when we like message, like while we're watching an event, like say we're watching a football game or whatever, and we share a communal experience. I mean, that is a part of that. I think that's what you're talking about.
Although I heard there's a new thing now, the hologram blockers. Have you guys seen them?
Those are reflective mirrors, right?
But it sounds like there's some skepticism, right, with VR. Is it going to work? Is it not? And I think because of the augmented reality and then 3D, some people went out and bought 3D TVs, and now no one puts the glasses on. And then, when the Tupac hologram was at Coachella, like I know my company had sent the music department in a stir, like, who are we going to bring back from the dead to send out on tour? And people were picking. Sure, would people pay a ticket for that? And so I think it's like there's a right to be skeptical about the next technologically driven consumption habit. I think from what I've seen from VR, there's some wildly impressive technology. There also, and we touched on this a little bit, so you have the right people investing the right amount of money in the technology check. There's also, it'll come down to the storytelling aspect, which we've talked about. There are a lot of companies like Samsung and Facebook and others who are bringing on well-decorated, experienced storytellers from traditional forms of media. I know, we were part of Justin Lin partnering with Samsung, and so they're bringing in the right people. Check. Now, will consumers want to have that experience with each other? I mean, time will tell. Will they be able to afford it? Will it interact? Who knows? Or we'll just go to the wayside like some of the other recent technology trends that didn't. The thing I do know is that they're setting it up for success. They're putting the right money in it. The right companies are in it. The right individuals. The right storytellers.
At the end of the day, we're all humans, right? And we want to experience these emotions, and we experience them, and they mean more to us when we do it together. So I think we have to watch that as advertisers, and that's our responsibility, is to make sure we remember that and be successful in creating great new brand experiences that remind us of what is great to be human.
And I think the name of this panel was enhanced advertising, right? So maybe we can talk about enhanced reality.
I'm going to change the name of the panel.
Put some banners on it.
Well, I think it's always interesting where a new development, where that tipping point is, where it moves from curiosity to a real business, and a lot of times you follow the smart money and see who's investing in what. To one of your points that you just made, so that's it's a great time, if not too early on. You hear that all the time. It's never too early if you have the funding to hang around long enough, because it will arrive. Anybody else? Okay, thanks for being here. Oh, wait, one more. I see you. I saw you.
So I appreciate when you guys are talking about ad blockers that you're saying, that it's important to get great content, it's important to tell a great story, but let's be honest, people are going to just block ads and go and get crappy ad out there. So how are you guys using in your platform, besides integrating a brand into the content? Are there any other types of advertising, such as interstitials or connected TV devices, that you think will help with this ad blocking technology that's not going to be as annoying?
I think it's symbolic of a platform change, so we could find other arrows to shoot at people to interrupt them from their experience, but the clear insight is we need to think about not interrupting them and enabling them, right? So an example of this is like a creative campaign that we did for a lifestyle product. It's Durex. It's a condom product, and they're like, well, we can't do banners anymore, right? It's like, yeah, you can. It's kind of dead. And they're like, well, we need to develop a way in which we can put our brand in the center of a healthy discussion around sexuality. How do we do that? That's the right thinking. So instead of plastering people, you can develop something that puts your brand in a way that makes it relevant and the right use.
It's not going to be a technology solution. It's going to
Correct.
be a creative and strategic
It's
solution.
an arms race.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it has to be an automatic solution. Otherwise, you're spending time on something that, at the end of the day, has to serve the audience and the customer.
You got it.
Yeah.
I think the solution is just create something that people seek out versus interrupt
Yep.
what they are watching. I think that's
And get them so engaged that they're not thinking about these other alternatives right away, because you haven't pissed them off. You've grabbed them from the beginning and brought them in.
Okay, thanks again, guys.